Welcome to a very, very special spot. Look around. Welcome to the Onset Wigwam. It was built in 1894, making it perhaps one of the earliest national spiritualist summer camps in the whole nation. This building is unique. There isn't another one like it in the whole world. It is Onset's first property to be recognized for a national register. And this is a very important thing for the village of Onset. The doors have been open for over 102 years. They've administered to their congregations. And never once in 102 years has this building ever been closed. Even during a horrendous hurricane, when the building was turned around on its very foundation. The purpose of the wigwam long ago and still today is healing. Now I know that when you drove up tonight and you looked at this building, if you were here for the first time or if you've been here 100 times, there's a mystique. There's a mystery about it when you walk up. This building is 96 feet in circumference. It's 26 feet high. It has 2 outside doors facing, 6 windows, and 8 slanted 12-foot walls, and a circular roof to the top. Now when you came in, it probably was light enough for you to realize that the building is painted Indian red, and the roof is foliage green. So that combination is very natural to the Indian. And the coat that this building wears outside is made up of 9,000 hand-cut cypress shingles. And during the restoration, when my husband was in charge of all the hard work, 9,000 hand-cut shingles were made once again and put on the outside of this building. So that's enough on its own. And then over the door, there's a sign that says, maybe you hadn't noticed it before, but after tonight, I'm sure you're going to notice things that you'll never forget. That sign says, dedicated, erected to the memory of the Red Man, 1894. Liberty throughout the world and freedom to all races. And those are the principles on which this wigwam was built. Well, now you're inside. You've had a chance to chat for a while, and maybe you've been gazing around at a lot of things in here. You see the walls that I talked about. The only thing we didn't do authentically in our restoration of this building was to put the wraparound shelf that became a seat on the outside wall. And if you look carefully, you'll see the marks where that bench was attached originally. And when Paul was doing the restoration, this nice old man came along. His name was Mr. Hall, a spiritualist from Canada, in his 80s, I believe. What's it called? In his 80s. And being authentic restorers and having the book, The Story of the Wigwam, which was written in 1904 for our Bible, and wanting to do everything as authentically as possible, it bothered us because we weren't putting that shelf back. But we didn't put it back. And when the man came in, Paul mentioned this to him. And he said, well, you know why it's not there? Because I'm the man who took it down. He said, I pulled that off. And he said, and I'll tell you why. And I don't think you should waste your time putting it up there again. He said, sit up against that wall. And how would you like to stay in church for 2 hours like this? If it were slanted back, hooray. Slanted this way, So there is room actually for 200 people to sit in this room, in this building. And of course, with that shelf or that bench up against the wall, it created a little more space. But I think it was much wiser to eliminate it, put the chairs where they are, pull them out a little bit, and everybody can be comfortable. Okay, so I talked about the walls and let you know why that was not done. Because, no matter how good a job you do, or how good a job you think you do, there's always someone who's going to come and say, you didn't do this. And I can't wait for them, because they're going to say, I know it, you know why? And we get an answer. So, there are many of you are not spiritualists, I'm sure. I'm not spiritualist either, but I guess I am, because I've been married to this place for a long time. And also, 20 years before, it caught my attention, and that's why the restoration. But for those of you who are not spiritualists, I want you to know there are two people who are very important to this religion. Number one is the medium. The medium gets messages from the spirit world and gives them to people as they come for readings. The second person is the healer. And I'm not putting them in that order, because the healer, long ago, was considered to be the most important, and the most important function was healing. And the healer stands behind these chairs. This is a healing circle. Originally there were 5 chairs. Now there are 7, because the congregation grew. These chairs are painted red, Indian red again. They had a strong tie with the native people. They felt the suppression and the problems that the Indians had. Spiritualists faced that same similar situation. So the healer stands over you, and from his spirit guide, he gets guidance and strength to give you a healing. It could be physical, it could be emotional, it could be spiritual. Any kind of healing. And this, in the center, is the healing pole. In 1894, when this building was dedicated for the first time, there were a group of Micmac Indians who came to the dedication. They had come down to Onset for probably 10 years previously. They lived in Annapolis Royal, Nova Scotia, and they did basket weaving and chairs and all kinds of beadwork. And then they would come to the resorts in the summertime in the United States to make money. And of course, one of the biggest resorts in the whole world, the whole country, was right here in Onset. So they came, and there was a group of them. Their names were Pictou, and Aunt Mary Tony was a member of this original group of spiritualists. Her picture is up on this, in that frame on the left-hand side, but we'll get into that a little later. But anyhow, the Micmac people came, and they sensitized this pole. That means they blessed it. They gave it their energy. They gave it their love and their feeling, so that for centuries to come, or years to come, that energy would come off that pole. It would come into the healers. It would come into the people, and it would give a wonderful feeling of love in this wigwam. And so for all these years, for 102 years, people have stepped up to the healing chair, and they have been touched. And some of them, or many of them, have been healed. And all the things that are here on the center pole, hanging, beads, statuary, even to a little stone. Some real gold beads on there. But this little stone is just as important to the spirituality of this building as a set of golden beads. Because what these things represent is a piece of the heart and the thankfulness of the person who sat in this chair and got a healing. And they felt like, I'm not going to take it all for me. I want to give something back. And back they made. Pictures on the wall, bunting that's up there. I beaded that prayer feather for the centennial celebration. And I feel very good to know that my energy is there too. The energy of people who care, people who were grateful, and it will always be there on that pole. And then in 1994, when we did the restoration of this building, I had a wonderful man whose name was Paul Wildcat one of the holiest Micmac men in the country today. And he came to Onset for me. And he prepared a bag, and he went outside, and he blessed this whole area, and he came inside, and he blessed this whole room. And then he blessed the healing pole. And how he blessed it, he used an eagle feather, which is very precious, and the only people who are allowed to own them are the Indians. Well, a wild cat got that eagle feather from his ancestors when he was a little boy of 8. And he performed a ceremony here that was truly the most wonderful, touching ceremony that I've ever experienced anywhere in my life. You could see the love, you could see the sincerity, you could see the honesty from this man. And everybody who was here saw it too. So all that energy is here also. I want you to, even though there might be just a few spiritualists in here, we all have spirituality. We all have love. We all have thanksgiving. And Paul did a wonderful job in the electrical work in this building. Well, I frightened your dog if I just walked by her. Jean, Neil, I thought with it. Oh, I'm so glad to see you. Oh, no, that's okay. I love doggies as much as you do. Oh, I'm so glad you're here. It's okay. Oh, I know. My dog is eating him. Okay, I want to do something because Paul did the lighting in the way he did. The first button, I hope. Oh, I did it right the first time. Okay. He put those lights up like that so that you could see the wonderful construction of the ceiling. But also for another reason. You're sitting in these chairs right now. What I want you to do is to lean back in these chairs to get truly, truly comfortable. Spiritualists or not. Get back, get comfortable. Get in touch with your inner being. Let your thoughts float. Shut your eyes and meditate. And with the magic that's in this room, see what it feels like. Allow yourself to be surrounded by 102 years of positive, loving energy. And for a minute, if you believe it, I'm not going to talk. You feel it. Taking really big, deep breaths, letting all the stress of today be gone, and thanking your Supreme Being for being here among people who care. Is it a nice feeling? Nice, magical, positive, energized feeling? Well, you know about the outside, you know about the inside, you know what the two people who are important for spiritualism, and you know what it feels like to get in touch with yourself. And to look around at the people who are here, knowing that they want to be here, they're kind and they're good, and the energy is exciting. But to know about Onset, and this is what we're all here for. Now I thought maybe if 10 or 15 people show up, I'll be happy. I'm delirious tonight. So I've just finished tour the historical Victorian village of Onset for the Wareham Historical Commission. Has nothing to do with money. It has all to do with history. Inside is a historical sketch of the village of Onset. And then inside is a map with 20 historical destinations. The very first one on this map is the Wigwam. You made us proud of the village. You put us on the map on the village, so I put you on my map first. And when I give any kind of lecture, no matter what I'm up to, I don't ever read from anything. But if you could just pass those around and pray that everybody has one. And I must tell you, George, you better save one of these. Because I've already been told by somebody who saves Onset memorabilia, and I'm Gerry, you won't be around to see it, but 50 years from now, you're going to be a collectible. I already am, oh God. A collectible, huh? And there are some over here. I pray there'll be enough for everyone. Oh, okay. I have more at home. Just happen to have a few more at home.
Gerry, if you're short, I have extra copies in my office in Town Hall. In the town hall.
Well, somebody told me you're probably going to Town Hall.
No, I have them. I've kept them from going on the counter because the kids won't steal them.
Oh, okay. There you go, Bill. Some of the Town Hall. What I want is everybody to have one in their possession right now. Everybody, oh well. Everybody have one. And I know it won't take long, but I need to go through the historical sketch when you first open it up, because it's important. It's just a little scratching the surface of the history of Onset. There are some things there that people don't know. Maybe there are things you do know. And if it's when it's all over, you know other things that I don't, please come and whisper in my ear, because I want to always learn everything I can. So our historical sketch, want to do it together? Not out loud. Onset traces its beginning to a sale in 1666 of over 8,000 acres of land. The settlers of Plymouth Plantation bought this huge tract from the native people whose regional affiliation was with the Wampanoags. This transaction, known as the Agawam Purchase, created the Agawam Plantation. In Algonquin dialect, Agawam meant the sandy landing place. Here was their summer campground. After King Philip's War, a few families established farms, and then they added fishing and shell fishing to their economic base. The area was later called Old Pan, named for the large evaporation pans used in the important manufacture of salt, which were constructed on the local salt marshes. On Indian Mound, there's a road called Salt Works Road. A thickly wooded grove of majestic oaks and tall pines growing to the very edge of high bluffs gave the village still another name, Pine Point. During the 1860s, some resort development occurred, and by the 1870s, a summer holiday by the sea, plus a new style of worship, camp meetings, became fashionable. In 1876, a group of Boston businessmen, spiritualistic in faith, came in search of a suitable place to conduct their camp meetings. With the purchase of 150 acres of land from Benjamin Gibbs of Wareham and a charter from the Massachusetts legislature, the Onset Bay Grove Association on June 14, 1877, dedicated their campgrounds to the principles of spiritualism, with over 1,000 people in attendance. An area of absolute natural beauty. No wonder it was selected as the campground for the annual summer retreat of the spiritualists.
not of New England alone, but for the entire United States. The Onset Bay Grove Association developed streets and parks and sold building lots for summer residences. Firstly, white tents gleamed among the trees, replaced quickly by permanent dwellings. Over 150 cottages were constructed in 1884 alone, creating the most densely settled village in the town of Wareham, and it remains that today. Successful businesses were established, catering to the ever-growing tourist population. The old Colony Railroad ran a line exclusively for the Onset Bay Grove Association. And several times daily, vacationers arrived by train or pulled up to the pier in sailboats and steamers. Onset Village had become one of the most fashionable, well-known resorts of the times. Other groups added to the flavor of Onset. The Cape Verdeans came around 1890, settling in Oak Grove to work primarily in the cranberry industry. In 1911, the reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints held their first camp meeting on 30 acres of thickly wooded, right over there, thickly wooded land bought earlier from the Onset Bay Grove Association. Churches representing many denominations nurtured the spirituality of the people and enhanced the architecture of the village. Impressive Victorian estates were built for influential businessmen and famous theatrical stars. The Point Independence Yacht Club, organized by prominent professionals, was dedicated on July 3rd, 1909. The bustling little village had everything. And although 300 years have passed since the original inhabitants were here, gazing today from Onset Bluffs, the view is of the same sparkling waters. The same lover's moon shines on that bay. And a drive along the boulevard recalls the Victorian community of long ago. Onset has managed to hold on to the best of both worlds. Welcome to our village. Onset developed in a most interesting fashion. From any point on land, within minutes you can walk to the shore. Natural, unobstructed beauty is everywhere. Public use of our beaches, bluffs, and parks was made possible by the Onset Protective League. The decree of 1916 has preserved them forever. The unique manner in which roads were designed makes locating historical landmarks easy. Streets run east and west, avenues north and south, and the boulevards circumvent the entire village. Ours is not a directed tour. Choose your own path. It could take a few hours, a day, or hopefully you may wish to return. Onset's beauty is captivating. Many visitors have become residents. So that is a little historical sketch of what Onset is all about. And then when you have the time, and you have this at home, read it all. And then come back to our village and look for these historical landmarks. But you're in the first one now, and that's kind of nice. And if you are a saver of Onset memorabilia, truly this will be collectible sometime. And I never even thought about it. I hate being thought of like that. All right. How the spiritualists were the creators of the past and the present Onset. In order to know about that, you need to know about the spiritualists and spiritualism. Is that okay?
Yep.
All right. First, we need to talk a little bit about modern spiritualism. It was on the night of March 28th. Oh, it says 28 in your book from the banner of white. Okay. I show it to you.
That's okay.
All right. In March of 1848. And modern spiritualism started with what people hear about as the Rochester Rappings. This happened in a farmhouse in Hydesville, New York. And it happened to two little sisters. Catherine and Margaretta. Catherine and Margaretta Fox. The story was that a man had been murdered in that house. And these little sisters would, on occasion, hear knockings and rappings on the walls and on the furniture. And then pretty soon they realized that they could communicate with. There was a communication between these rappings and them. And then they started asking some questions. And if the answer should be yes, and if the answer would be no, and the story spread, and people came to their house. And they sat around the kitchen table and the living room table, and they have what were called little seances. And of course, like everything, once somebody says it out loud that this has happened to them, then they heard of other people to whom this had happened in other little towns. And pretty soon they were having these meetings in the town hall or in the Grange Hall. And then pretty soon from the little towns, they spread to the cities, to New York City and to Boston and to Providence. And they hired big halls. And spiritualism flourished. It just grew and grew and grew. That was the beginning of it. And then 30 years later, it had grown to be a very large religion. There are Catholics and Protestants and Jewish people and Indians and spiritualists. And spiritualism is a national recognized religion. So many people don't know what it's about. And so when you don't know about things, you laugh about things, or you spread stories that aren't so. This is a recognized religion. Their only law is do unto others as you would want done unto you. And if we could all live like that, it would be pretty wonderful. Well, we take the spiritualism, the religion of spiritualism, from New York in a little country town to the cities, and now it's starting to spread down to Onset. And I told you there's a little bit in this brochure about how they came to Onset. But I know a few more things that are kind of interesting. This group of, you see, social and economic conditions that are going on in a country dictate style. And when you think about the 1870s, think about what had happened and what was happening in America. The Industrial Revolution was really well established and people were starting to make a little money. Also, the Civil War was over, a terrible war that applied brother against brother and town against town, and the scars were deep. And there were no real religious leaders that came out of that. So this new form of religion was just perfect for the times. Revival meetings and camp meetings. But something else was happening in America at that time too. And what it was that the average man now had a little bit of time and a little extra money, and he was becoming aware of his health. No longer was it very wise to work 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, and amass all this money and die. What good would it do you? So they decided that maybe a holiday by the water, a summer holiday, would be a wonderful thing. So these men, who were spiritualists, were also businessmen, and they created the Onset Bay Grove Association. And where the donut shop is, downtown Onset, was their administration building. That was the building where you could go, look at their plans of Onset, and choose a house lot, and buy a house lot, put up your tent, then put up a 2-room cottage, then it turned into a 4-room, and the village of Onset evolved in that manner. But they came here to have their camp meetings. And in June of 1877, they had a charter from the legislature. They became incorporated. That was their name, the Onset Bay Grove Association. And the spiritualists who were involved in this were the Onset Bay Camp Workers Association. So they were the religious group, The Onset Grove Association was the real estate group, but they were pretty much all one. And on that day that they dedicated the Grove to spiritualism, there were over 1,000 people there. Well, when you think about this wonderful resort, why should we change and have different guides? And for 2 years, 91 and 92, there was a struggle within the Onset Bay Grove group. And then in 1892, something happened that sort of pushed it over the edge. There was a book written, excuse me, spiritualists, but there was a book written, and the title was Some Accounts of the Vampires of Onset. And it was banned in Onset, in Wareham. And for over 100 years, nobody knew about this book. And what it is a collection of newspaper articles from all over the country, from sensational cases where some spiritualist mediums who were not honest, and dishonesty and greed creep into every organization, into every life at some point. So we're not pointing our finger at the spiritualist, we're pointing our finger at a very amusing book. And there are accounts in here about fakers, quackery, and treachery among mediums and healers in the spiritualist religion. It hit the cities in 1892. Crucial time. I read the book through and through, and I enjoyed reading it, and I thought, none of this really happened here in Onset. But then I read the people who came to the Onset Bay Grove Association's meetings down at the bandstand, even people who came here to the Wigwam, and those famous people from all over were called the Onset Ring, and the Onset Ring was operating in Onset in the 1890s. And then Mr. Staples, our historian, and I'm proud and happy to know him, a wonderful man with a great mind and a great thirst for knowledge and truth, found this book. There was none to be had in Wareham. And he went to the library in New Bedford, and he found it there. And they copied the book, and they gave it to our librarian. And then Elizabeth Bozzoli, who was our town clerk, was also a reporter for the Brockton Enterprise at the time this book was found. And so Elizabeth did a wonderful article on the vampires of Onset. In this group tonight, every one of you is a celebrity because you're all here and you all care, and that's the most important thing to me. But Bill Tatlow is a great-great-grandson of three great-grandsons of one of the charter members of this organization. And then when Mrs. Toms came through the door with her husband Peter, I was so delighted, and I thought how nice of her to bring that portrait, a very wonderful portrait of Father Lyons, who was her great-great-great-grandfather. Two greats. And he, excuse me, I should have lied a little, it feels better, right? Yeah. Well, anyhow, Father Lyons was the leader of the parade when they took off from the Onset Bay Grove Association and decided they would form their own. He was one of the very instrumental spiritualists early on. So here's how it all went down. They separated. There were about 20 charter members out of that original group. And they decided, nope, we're sticking with our Indian guides. And then if you had been an onlooker in Onset, on September 21st, 1991, you would have seen men and women coming from their houses, descending upon Highland Avenue and Union Avenue, and then together wending their way to Woburn Grove. That is where the standpipe is up on the hill. It was almost as if they had been called in unison. Nothing had been posted. There were no posters anywhere, nothing in the newspapers, and yet all these people were walking to Woburn Grove. Almost as if the guides from the Micmacs and the Wampanoags were working on their minds, giving them the direction to come this way. Because when I first saw this wigwam, I thought, so it's a spiritualist. How come it's over here in the backwoods? Why would it be here? Onset is over there. That's where everything was happening. That's where the church is now. Why is this here? Well, it's here because the Indian spirits collected this core group of people and brought them to Woburn Grove, and they had a seance, and they called up the spirits from the Indians and asked for guidance. And their guidance was to come down here. And they selected this lot, number 358 on the town books. This was the lot facing Crescent Park, which was named because it looks like a crescent moon, and the East River, to put their lodge. The Indians wanted a place, and these spiritualists wanted them to have a place to always be able to come, to teach, to work, to love. And they said, build your lodge here, and you will have great success. So they bought that first lot, and then the next month, they collected enough money, and they bought another lot. And then they formed a building committee to really talk about building a lodge. And they called that lodge their wigwam. And in 1893, they chose Mr. Carnes from Bridgewater, who was a contractor, but he was also a spiritualist, to be the man to build their wigwam. And he started the building in May of 1894. And Paul started the restoration. He's Mr. Carnes, you know, reincarnated. And I'm, by the way, Henrietta Bullock. She had all the meetings in her house and talked for 2 years. Okay? I'm still there. So Mr. Carnes started in May of 1894, and by July 30th of 1894, this wigwam was ready for dedication. And on July 30th, 1994, we were ready for our dedication. Ellen Walsack, who's here tonight, was the vice president of our Onset Wigwam Restoration Committee. Lots, and if I'm missing anyone in this room who helped with the restoration, almost the whole town did, I apologize. But we were dedicated. We were being worked upon by those same Indian spirits who did it to the other ones 100 years ago. I truly believe that. Too many things happened. It was too coincidental that everything fell into place, and this building was recreated again. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience. So they built this building, and they had so many people here on that dedication that they stayed open for a whole week. And they had services twice daily in this building. Josephine Stone was the first president, but she died the week that this was open. And Mary Coburn Weston started her career in the spiritualist movement in Onset as vice president. But in August, when they had their first meeting, she was elected president. So Mary Coburn Weston, who was born in Waterville, Maine in 1838, her father was in politics. Her uncle was the war governor of the state of Maine. Her brother was a senator. And when her uncle died, he was a very, very wealthy man who donated millions of dollars to charity. And when he died, he left her the Coburn Mansion in Waterville, Maine, Skowhegan, Maine. Well, she was a very, very good person. She was the gun behind the wigwam. She wanted so much for this place to succeed. And she painted this picture of Big Mountain, her Indian guide. That's original to this building, 102 years ago. Mary Weston was an artist of note. Many of her things are in History House in Skowhegan, and several paintings are at Colby College, and some other paintings are in Washington. I read where she had 200 in her home here, the Ramona Cottage on West Central Avenue on Shell Point. The house is still standing. Doesn't look exactly the way it did, but it's still there. 200 paintings. She never sold anything. She gave them away. And when we did the restoration, I thought, somebody's going to come knocking on the door and say, here's a painting of Mary Weston's. Nothing ever came forth. No painting that she did has surfaced. It'd be fun now that you're all here. You're here because you're interested in history. If you ever see, she went by May Weston and Mary Weston, Mary C. being Colburn. And another thing that she painted, and this never took a hike out of this building because it was too heavy and it would be too hard to get it down, because many things she did, many things that I knew were here are gone, and it's disappointing. But she painted this, Victory to the Red Man at Last. She designed and painted it and donated on that quartered oak case. The gold chains represent each one of the original members of this society. She put them all there in that painting. And in this corner, there's two hands shaking hands, a white man and a red man, the Indian and the white man. And over here, the scales of justice. That is original. That's over 102 years old, over 102 years also. Then there are Indian artifacts. Many of these paintings are of important spiritualists. We talked about Father Lyons. There's Mr. Storer, who's on top of that cabinet. He was the president of the Onset Bay Grove Association. This is Father Young. There are a lot of fathers and a lot of doctors in front of names with the spiritualists. And then you see a lot of Indian pictures on the wall. Those Indians are Indian guides that they would have. Now, it won't be, they might have a very famous Indian guide. Mary Bouchard is it all right? She is a pastor of the Somerset Spiritualist Church, and she comes here often and gives messages and readings on Wednesdays. Mary has a guide, and he's Sitting Bull. Okay? You never know who's going to come along. I want you to be their special one. I put the settee forward because I want you to know that the Indians were here. This is what the wigwam looked like in its heyday. Little past dedication day, with all the little cottages over here. And out of the picture, there was a white tent. And it was the tent of Aunt Mary Toney, the Indian, Micmac Indian lady from Nova Scotia. Mary, the mind reader, owned one of these cottages. And she was Aunt Mary Toney's daughter. But when we were doing the restoration, the people in Onset were so wonderful to me. The people who know, the people who care, like Jim Draper and Bill Tatlow and Franklin Smith. They were very interested because their family was part of this. And up in the fire station, I was with Jim one day, and he said, I got a picture you might like to see, but it's pretty bad, and it's cost too much money to have it fixed. And he showed me this picture, but this picture was horrendous. And he was right, it cost too much money to have it fixed. But we had it fixed, and we sold them for the dedication, and we made money. And I am so glad that we did that. There's a date on it of 1879. I wasn't authentic on the button, but I researched the photographer, found out when he was in business on that street in Brockton, and it came pretty close. And then in doing research for the brochure and for tonight, I found out that these Indians were here around 1880, almost 10 years earlier than they thought they were. And this Adirondack settee, look at it, and then look at this picture, and you know that these Indians brought that settee to this building. I'll do the picture of the wigwam on that end, and the picture of the Indians who were here on that end. After 6 short years, I'm almost done. After 6 short years, the membership, you can't believe what the membership increased to. Now this is a goal for you guys, okay? They only had 20 people when they started out, and they had the Harvest Moon Festival. Did you ever hear of the Hunter's Moon Festival too, Bill? The Onset Wigwam Association and the people who wanted this wigwam so badly had a Harvest Moon and they had a Hunter's Moon, one in September and one in October. And the money that they collected from the Hunter's Moon Festival, they had a dinner, they had a dance. This was back in the 1890s. You know how many people came to dinner? 150, 160 people came to sit-down dinners and dances in Onset in those days. Wouldn't it be great to have a Hunter's Moon Ball, OBA people? There are so many things we can do authentically, historically, to give Onset a shot, the right kind of shot in the arm. And it can happen right here. 20 people started this building. And in 6 years, their membership had increased to 500. From 20 to 500 people. They came from all over the United States. And Mary Weston was such an educated, kind, sincere person that she had friends all over the world. And they sent her all kinds of Indian memorabilia. She had given to her the cap, the Captain Jack, the Modoc Indian, who did the fighting in the lava beds, had that hat, and his wife sent it to Mary Weston. Also, she had the coconut cup that Captain Jack's wife owned. That was here one day. Where did they go? The beams were covered with Hudson Bay blankets. They're all gone. But in that case are 2 Eastern Woodland Indians, 2 pairs of beaded moccasins, and a little headpiece. The headpiece looks very much like what Aunt Mary Tony wore on that time. Well, I think you've gotten a kind of an idea and a feeling of how it happened, why it happened. And I said I don't read anything, and I don't, but I want you to hear just one thing. This is from Chief Seattle, and this is the end of the evening with me. To let you know how the Indians plugged into the spiritualist and how the Indians think and what their religion is all about. Chief Seattle said this at the Port Elliott Treaty when he was signing away his land where the present city of Seattle now stands. And he said, when your dead cease to love you in the land of their nativity as soon as they pass the portals of the tomb and wander away beyond the stars. They are soon forgotten and they never return. Our dead never forget the beautiful world that gave them being. When the last red man shall have perished, and the memory of my tribe shall have become a myth among the white man, these shores will swarm with the invisible dead of my tribe. And when your children's children think themselves alone in the field, the store, the shop, or in the silence of the pathless woods, they will not be alone. At night, when the streets of your cities and villages are silent, and you think them deserted, they will throng with the returning hosts that once filled them and still love this beautiful land. The white man will never be alone. Let him be just and deal kindly with my people, for the dead are not powerless. Dead, I say, there is no death, only change of lives.
You can always arrange for a good ending, can't you?
Can you imagine it? So, are there any questions from the... Oh dear. We'll let it wait. We'll wait a while.
Yes, it is. Push the stop. That means boo.
She used to do this Weekly I've been.
Yeah.
I have old postcards of the, I don't know what the church is now, it was the Methodist church,
Mm-hmm.
and the parsonage beside it. Now, early in the century, the parsonage stood on the corner and the church stood next to the Spiritualist church.
Mm-hmm. I told
And
you.
then, for some reason, they decided to swap them.
True. It is funny, isn't it?
I guess they didn't want the churches close together, I don't know.
Probably they were fighting. I
The
don't know.
building I live in was moved off Union Street, not Union Avenue.
Right.
It runs parallel to Onset Avenue,
Mhm.
because it was in the way of the movie theater they were building.
Mhm.
Half of the buildings on Union Street, on that side of the street, were moved to accommodate the shops on Onset Avenue.
See, they got a tourist thing too, didn't they? And I told you that Paul is reincarnated. You know how many houses he's moved? 43. And not in Onset.
Yeah, well,
So
this
God
was
help us
before
if he
trailers.
starts in down there.
These were on rollers.
They're on rollers, yeah, yeah. It's so interesting, isn't it? And one little thing can open the door and you want to learn something else. So this is the beginning. I wish to see that people in Onset have a historical society. So we've got a historical society. I'm sorry, George and Kathy Hinman. There's a historical society in Wareham. And Wareham, Onset's part of Wareham. It is. But I find a different feeling about history, and especially about memorabilia and collectibles with the people in Onset. They have a pride, they want to know all kinds of stuff, and more importantly, they share their information with each other. And that's the key to everything, sharing. What good is it if you don't give it away, if you don't share it? And I feel as though this is a prime place to have a historical society. All these collections, get them out. Anytime I've ever done anything at the OPL and we've had a crowd, it's been because of history. Look at the people here tonight. You care. They care downtown Onset. It's just a suggestion. I bet you'd get so many people you wouldn't believe it. Up here I have pictures of the things that the spiritualists were responsible for. They built the temple. You know how much the temple cost when they built it? It's already torn down now. Built new, it cost $10,000. That was a wonderfully big, big building. Nothing wrong with it structurally, but we needed a parking lot.
I thought they moved to new location.
It is. It didn't, it was torn down, but it was torn down with a purpose. It was not destroyed, it wasn't demolished. It was, what do you call it, Paul? Taken apart. Yeah, and it was reconstructed in Stoughton on a Cedar Hill Country Club. And I think that I know Mr. Thompson did it, and I think he paid $7,000 for it to the town. He sold it to the country club in Stoughton for $14,000. This was in the 1970s. Thought he did great, and in the 1970s I guess he did. But that building today is worth $1 million. And it was right over here in Onset. Wonderful big building. See, it was so important for me to see that this gets saved in its original condition, because the spiritualists were responsible for 3 important buildings. They were responsible for the administration building, which has been many things over the years, and I'm sorry that it's a donut shop, but that's what it is. But that was the administration building. The great temple is torn down, that's not even here. And this wigwam, probably because it's where it is, was able to be saved. So realize what a gem you have in Onset, and respect this old wigwam forever. Thank you.
Thank you, Gerry. That was really wonderful. And I am going to get you together with my daughter, and we are going to get this videotape. I want to, at this time, introduce the Vice President of the National Spiritualist Association of Churches, who is our special guest this weekend, the Reverend Pamela Ashley of Milwaukee.
meeting. That was wonderful to have that history, and I certainly hope that tape can be made available for our organization
It's
so
from the
that
library.
others can hear it. It's just wonderful. We had many camps at one time, and thousands of people, and that's how spiritualism began and spread across the country. The National Spiritualist Association of Churches was the first organized association. Since then, many organizations have come off of that one, and now there are more than 14 spiritualist organizations in the country. We had many camps, but we currently now, our association has only 12 left. And so this camp is very important to us. I had the privilege of visiting 7 camps this summer and working at them, and it's wonderful because the camps are beginning to draw the people back in again to hear about spiritualism and what a wonderful religion is. It's great to be here. This is the first time I've been here, and it's wonderful, and I look forward to being here this week and spending time with everybody. Thank you so much for everything you did here. I've heard just tremendous things about the work you all did and your heart and soul that you put into it, and I know without Gerry, this wigwam wouldn't have happened, and I personally thank you for the National Spiritualist Association of Churches.
Thank you. But it would have May I say at this point one thing that I forgot that's kind of important? Well, see, we're having the calligraphy done for 2 of us, but that was from this, I can read it to them, okay? When this restoration was completed in the state of Massachusetts, through the Massachusetts Historical Commission, they have preservation awards. And they choose, out of all the preservations that are going on, there were 350 some odd projects in Massachusetts in 1995? 94.
No,
And
it
they,
says
95, yeah, because it's a year later.
Right.
And so they chose only 10 out of those 385. Some of them were mansions, all different kinds from all over the state. And this little wigwam, our Onset Wigwam Restoration Committee was honored with a preservation award from the state of Massachusetts. So that's really kind of nice for the town too. Then we have, you don't know about this, okay? We have a cup plate. Oh, excuse me. On the table behind you is a purple one, right? Thank you. Well, Ellen was in on this too. And this all happened at my kitchen table. On a piece of scrap paper, I'll say to be kind. Toilet paper, to be honest. Sketched the little sketch of the wigwam. And the first cup plate we pressed, there were 300. Designed that with the wigwam, the Indian, the oak trees, the East River, the sunflowers for the Spiritualist Association, and the date. We did this as a fundraiser because we needed a lot of money to do what we did here. We pressed 300, and the 300 sold immediately. There are 365 people who belong to the organization, the Pierpoint Cup Plate Collectors of America. None of them got a cup plate. They all sold here in our area. They would kill for one of these because you know what happened? It was chosen as #1 cup plate in the country. So that blue cup plate won an award. This building won an award. And then last year, we gave, our committee gave permission to the people in the wigwam to use the mold to press another cup plate for a fundraiser for them. And then we put it to rest. It's taken its place with all the winners of all the years in the Pierpoint Museum right now. But this is amethyst. And I know right now that there's never going to be another one, no matter what color. And I think that they have about 50 left, maybe 50 left. These are $12. The ones that we sold that were blue went immediately. When these are gone, they're gone too, and they are going to be the value that that first one was. you're here tonight, you're interested in history, perhaps you will want to get one. And then I have something that I want to show that nobody knows, that Mary Lou doesn't know about.